Greetings, everyone. Welcome back to the AfrikanExodus show. I'm your host, Tierney Cherie. We're continuing on with our lecture series for Conspiracy to Erase a Nation. I want to remind you all, just for housekeeping, this whole series is around the book that I wrote, available on Amazon, which is called Conspiracy to Erase a Nation. This unveils the truth of where the real Israel, the real Yasharel, the one of the Bible, was really located. It was not in Palestine, so just the spoiler. But this one really unveils the truth and exactly how this happened, how this was hidden. I give a lot of information and research and citations for you to research on your own. So definitely, if you're interested, you could purchase the book there. Also, if you want to get a mini booklet of the book, this presentation, I'm going to be pulling some things from the booklet, for example. It's free. You can find it on my Patreon, and you can also find it on my Telegram channel. Telegram is a decentralized app that I use anytime I post a video. Also, Patreon, I do weekly exclusive there. So if you want to join the channel, you can do that as well. All right, so we're going to talk about what is the real kingdom of Yasharel. This is probably the more fun, the funner part of this whole process of writing this book, because we could talk abstractly about the fact that we've been lied to, talk abstractly about the fact that something's not right, that things have been changed, but until you actually have a visual, just to show you this slide, a real visual of the land of Yasharel. If you look up to the top of the slide, that is the place where Yasharel was. Let that soak in. This is the land when Yah said a land, a promised land, a land of milk and honey, some place that was going to be beautiful, right? As you imagine it. This is the place that was promised to Abraham. Let's relish in that, and let's just appreciate that. So now I want to talk about who exactly were the nations identified in history. Obviously, we know their names by the Bible, but the kingdoms that occupied this territory carried different names than what we are given in the Bible, and that's one way things were able to be masked to us for so long. So let's get into this presentation. So again, if you look right here at this slide, this is the real Yasharel, meaning this, not this entire slide, but this whole region. If you look from the blue now, and when you get to the Gulf of Aden, around there, that's where the border cut off. I believe after the Gulf of Aden, probably before you get to northern Somalia. So that would encompass Djibouti. That right there, that's where the Yasharel cut off. And we know it extended north at least to Adulis. And I get into the specifics of locations if you purchase the book, but around Adulis, that is where the cutoff would be to the north. So we're going to talk about the three kingdoms that occupied this big swath of land. We're going to talk about first the land of Punt, which occupied this land from 2200 BCE to 1493 BCE. And we're going to go to DMT or Damat. That is from 900 BCE to 300 BCE. And also we're going to talk about Aksum, 300 BCE to 900 CE. Three kingdoms occupied this area. Now, this is something that was very remarkable that I found. This is probably one of the most exciting things that I was able to uncover through this book, because when you read about these kingdoms, we're going to go to the mini booklet right now. When you read about these kingdoms, these were not small players. The fact that these kingdoms were erased from history tells us that there is an intentional effort to hide the truth. The fact that most people cannot find Punt, the fact that most people cannot find Damat, the fact that we can't find much information on Aksum. And Aksum is actually a more recent kingdom, but even so, despite the fact that the Romans and the Greeks all attest to this kingdom, the early history of the kingdom is very much hidden. There's not a lot that's been uncovered about it. So I'm going to talk about Punt starting off. So Punt was known to the Egyptians to be a divine land. They literally called it the land of the gods. And it was described as being rich, having ebony, gold, it carried exotic animals. And so Punt, it was known it was in East Africa, but the Egyptians were not very specific on exactly where this territory was. At least it was not uncovered for us to see where exactly this territory was. And so because of that, the land of Punt has been kind of a mystery. We just know it's a very rich land, a land of minerals and animals and things like that, right? Now, some people came to the conclusion that Punt was in Arabia. The reason why is because at certain times the Egyptians would attest to crossing the Red Sea to get to Punt, right? So obviously the natural assumption is it must be in Arabia. However, this has been discounted because there's other times where the Egyptians have talked about going south in order to get to Punt. The reason that people have hypothesized this probably was the case is because, as you know, Egypt was a country that had wars with different nations. Obviously, we know southern Egypt or south of Egypt, different times Egyptians might have been warring with different people. So the idea was if there was an enemy nation to the south, that Egyptians probably would have taken the Red Sea in order to avoid a clash because they were not there for military conquest. They were literally there for trade. So if that's the case, if you could get to Punt by crossing the Red Sea at a certain point, or you can also get to Punt by going south, the conclusion has been that Punt had to have been inside of East Africa, south of Egypt. And in fact, a number of people did studies comparing what the Egyptians depicted inside of their hieroglyphs of Punt, and they found that the same animal, wildlife that was told about inside of the Egyptian hieroglyphs, and also the same animals in the sea, the same fish, the same things that are described inside of the hieroglyphs match the Red Sea, particularly match the region of Ethiopia and Eritrea, that whole region down there. So for that reason, they've come to the conclusion that Punt would have had to be in East Africa, and the exact location really that Yasharel would have been. So we're also going to talk about another kingdom. We're going to talk about the kingdom of Demont. I want to read from the slide on Demont. It says, Demont was a powerful kingdom, prosperous African kingdom that ruled for over 200 years. Located in what is today Ethiopia, the kingdom Demont was one of the most influential political entities that emerged during Africa's era of kingdoms from the 14th to 19th centuries. The ruling dynasty was believed to have been founded by two brothers and traced their lineage through 10 ruling families. The people who resided within the boundaries of this great realm are also known as the Oromo, as they referred to themselves, and their language was called Afan Oromo. Now, we will talk more about the Oromos inside of another presentation. Some things I want you to note from there. Number one is that the indigenous tribe of Demont was actually the Oromos, okay? Among other tribes. This is what has been uncovered from history. A lot is not known about Demont, but from what we know, Oromos were one of the tribes. It's also said in here that it's believed that this nation began from 10 brothers. Think about how similar that is to the 12 tribes of Israel beginning Yasharel. Also, something that is interesting about Demont is that there was known to be a division between the northern and the southern kingdom. That's something else I cite in my book. Something else that we know about Yasharel. We know that there was the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom, right? Now, the interesting thing is that Demont becomes replaced by a kingdom called Aksum. And Aksum comes and essentially is known by our modern historians. Aksum becomes a nation that is known, as I said, by the Greeks and by the Romans. They are a powerful nation. They're also known as being the first Christian nation. It became a Christian nation inside of the 4th century CE. And a lot of the things that we hear about Ethiopia, like the Kibra Nagast, or the fact that the Menelik dynasty, all of that comes from Aksum, okay? So I want to show you this timeline that I created. And the timeline, I think, outlines things very clearly. If you look on the top, we have Canaan, the country that the people who we know were expelled from the Holy Land. If you want a backstory on why they were expelled, you could look up the video I did on AfrikanExodus on the Curse of Ham. But they were expelled from the Promised Land, right, by Yasharel. If you look at the dates, Canaan was destroyed 1250 BCE. And between that time or in 1150 BCE, that's the estimate, right? Punt disappears from history after 1493 BCE. So let's let that resonate. Canaan gets destroyed sometime between 1250 BCE and 1150 BCE. Punt disappears from history after 1493 BCE. Meaning the timeline is very similar as far as when Punt disappears and when Canaan disappears, okay? Yasharel, okay, the kingdom of Yasharel in the Bible, it's been estimated by biblical historians that The Assyrian captivity would have happened around 222 BCE, and the Babylonian captivity around 586 BCE. Damont disappears from history by 300 BCE. Very similar time. By the time of 300 BCE, there is no more Damont, okay? Yahuda, what you might call Judea, returns from captivity in 516 BCE. And Aksum reappears in place of Damont after 300 BCE. So if you haven't figured it out, essentially, Punt, the land of Punt, is the land of Canaan as attested to in the Bible. This way that Punt disappears, very mysterious. People don't know why. Canaan disappears, however, we know why. It's because Yasharel comes and they take the land. Now, Yasharel has a kingdom, and the kingdom basically goes into captivity. That kingdom is Damont. Now, we don't know whether Damont was just Judea or there was another kingdom, but certainly at least Judea was Damont, right? Then we have Yahuda, or Judea, and this place is the place that gets founded, okay, after the tribe of Yehuda, also known as Judah, returns from captivity. And this is very similar to how Aksum, for some reason, again, historians don't know why, Aksum reappears and they become the ruling power, but no one really knows why. They also know that this place is being ruled by people called the Sabians, and we can get more into them in another presentation. But essentially, these people are believed to possibly have been the real rulers of Aksum, okay? So this is what I wanted to show you all. This timeline really shows you that